Hey, this is Bob with the MakerSource podcast. As you know, talking to everything startup related in terms of founders, companies that help, investors, you name it. So very, very excited for our guest here today. As most of you know, if you've listened to some of the other episodes, in addition to being part of the MakerSource team, I am also a startup co-founder of Force Impact Technologies. And today, we are joined by none other than my partner in this endeavor, Mr. Anthony Gonzales.
Thank you, Bob. We're partners in business and partners in life.
Amen to that. So for those of you listening, normally we keep the episode length to 20 minutes to keep it manageable. Today we're going to let it play a little bit. So we'll see how this one goes, but it should be a good, honest conversation about the journey, the challenges, and hopefully the success. So Anthony, first, why don't you give us some background on the FitGuard, on Force Impact, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me today, Bob. I really appreciate it. I'm Anthony Gonzales out of California. I grew up there, but I did go to ASU for undergrad there. I played rugby at Arizona State. Go Devils, very proud. After that, I worked for a little bit at a company called Avnet doing inside sales. And during my MBA program, while I was working at Avnet, we were tasked to come up with a creative solution to a problem we're having in our everyday lives. Through my experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling, and of course my time at rugby, I always knew head injuries were prevalent and an issue for myself and my teammates and other people in my near environment. And so I came up with this idea to kind of leverage the things I was selling at work and embed them into something that I used in my daily life, a mouth guard, a gum shield. And so that was kind of the initial inspiration. And due to our naive ignorance and blissful youth, I thought this would be a simple problem that we could just put into a mouth guard and then it'll just work. 3.5 years later and $500,000, we're still in development trying to validate and optimize a product to release at scale.
Wait a minute. So let's go back for a minute there. You said 3.5 years, $500,000. Isn't this like Shark Tank? Like, don't we just go out there, you and I, and we meet with investors and we do a little song and dance, and like 6 minutes later they get up, we shake hands, and then we've got money, and then everything is solved?
Yeah, I have lived that scenario. I have been on the television. I have received money from a billionaire. And not only did it not solve my problems, but it just exasperated the problems because now I had to be held to a higher level of accountability. I had a fiduciary obligation to make these investor happy and increase shareholder wealth in a realistic timeline. So it helped in the sense that it made things more serious and it added a lot of validity. But beyond the cash itself, there wasn't too much help from our investors. And frankly, most investors don't really want to help. They want to make more money. And their job is to deploy their money in a strategic and advantageous strategy that allows them to have more money.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is that if you're out there and you're raising money, it's a weird, delicate balance, because we know firsthand how hard it is to get that money, but also what happens when you get investors who aren't interested in being a strategic part of the team. Without naming names, that particular individual was a challenge, and as you pointed out, has become almost kind of a detriment at this point, when people are like, oh, if you got a billionaire on the team, why doesn't he just take care of all your problems? This guy's got $1 billion, like $1 billion with a B. It's more than a person could spend in a lifetime. And we don't even talk to him all that much anymore. You said being on TV was the primary interest there.
Yeah, we were used and abused, and again, I'm okay with that. But now, it puts us in a different echelon of what we should have accomplished by a certain point. Most investors, like women in a relationship, have an expectation of when and how things should happen in a particular order. So I very much come back to the metaphor that meeting with investors is like dating. There's going to be things that you like, things that you don't like, and then you're going to find someone that you work well with. And that's a hard process, and it's not easy, and it's not something you should rush into, and it's not something you should do just because you find them attractive on the surface. But it does take diving a little bit deeper, more than their checkbook, and what they want to do, how they're going to communicate to you, how they speak to you is very important, and how they view you as where you stand on a priority list if you need to get them on the phone in the middle of the night.
Right. And just to clue everyone in out there on Anthony's situation. He is engaged currently, so I'm sure that planning a wedding and going through all this is weighing heavily on his mind as he compares the progressive steps of a relationship to an unfavorable situation. Whereas my situation could not be any more favorable. I love you, baby. You're the best. No issues, problems, or challenges with my wife at all. So good luck with the wedding. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic.
Thank you.
But you guys do have, listen to me. So I'm used to talking to everybody else. We do have a little money in the bank.
We do.
So it's weird 3.5 years in to look at the statistics about, the startups that fail and that aren't going to make it. And, here we are well past the average for the shelf life of a startup. We've got some money in the bank. And, part of that feels good. Am I right? Do you feel good on those days, or are you more kind of apprehensive about where we're at?
Speaking on highlighting the good feelings, I don't like to ever be happy when something bad happens to someone else, but it does feel good to know that a couple people who have rejected us are no longer around, no longer in business, and these were investors we went to asking for money, and we've made it longer than they have. So there's just like a sweet tinkle of like vengeful satisfaction about those kind of opportunities.
Easy for you to say.
We're still here.
Yep.
I'm still doing what I love in an industry that I'm very passionate about. I still wake up every day with drive and desire, and not very many other people can say that. So while financially things aren't looking so great in my personal life, as a whole, optimistically, the long term, I'm heading in the right direction, and that's what's important to me.
Okay, that's good. I'll take that.
Thank you.
I think I would echo that sentiment as well. That it's there are definitely challenges and struggles and stress, but that overall it's a good place to be. Things are happy. So I guess looking back, because we have very different experiences here as I have continued working and I support the family, and you have gone all in on Fit, and you're just dedicated 24 hours a day. What is it like? Just take us through kind of a day in the life of the startup. We'll call you CEO. I know you're not big on titles, but everybody out there listening, everyone we talk to has kind of this glamorous, sexy social network idea of a startup, and they're just like, this is going to be awesome. So take us through a day in the life of that dream.
All right, so I wake up every morning, probably around 7:30, to put out fires. So I'm always waking up to an email queue of people who want something, things I need to get back to. I kind of work through that through the morning up until about lunchtime. It's really just putting out fires, getting back to people, and dealing with all the things that have already happened in Asia. I don't know if most of you guys understand this, but the Pacific time zone is the last working hour in the world. I mean, if you count Hawaii, but other than that, we are the last working hour. So everyone has finished their day. Everything has been done across the whole entire world till Los Angeles. So because of that, when I wake up, I have a whole work day of all the other people across the world who have already completed their day. For my own sanity, I usually try to get some type of athletic workout in the day, typically jiu-jitsu. That'll coincide with my lunch break, so I sneak away, get some training in, because it helps me keep sane, healthy, and I believe physically working out has been scientifically proven to help your stressors alleviate and manage stress, and so it's really important for me. Yeah, science, man. And then in the afternoons, I work with really generating what we're doing next. So I have to create my own work. So some of the hardest thing about being in a startup environment is there's no direction. I don't have a job description. I don't have job responsibilities. I do everything. So if there's something to be done, like I have to do it. So whether it comes to reading medical journals, so I'm up to date on the latest research, or investigating grants because we want to apply for government money, or dealing with PhDs, or generating applications. Like we apply to so much crap all the time. Like it's hard to stay on top of everything because there's so many things that I could be doing. And because I work and live from home, I feel obligated that I always should be doing something because there's always something to be done. So that's time consuming as enough. In the evenings, I've started tutoring as a second income to supplement myself. And then I'm usually, on my emails till 8, 9 o'clock at night, not sitting there in front of a computer, but if something comes up, I pretty much stop what I'm doing and I address that email to get it out to make sure my workflow the following day is manageable.
And that's another good point. Actually, two good points in there. One, it is, you have to create your own day. There's no one there telling you what to do. So pretty much the opposite of being married. Just kidding, baby. I love you. Remember, we have no issues. That was just a joke for the podcast. But seriously, it's the opposite of being married. But you also mentioned picking up a second job. And so we talked earlier, we've got money in the bank.
Yeah.
I know why you've got a second job. I know where the money goes and how it goes. But, I think this other idea is raise $1 million, pay yourself $200,000. So talk to us about why you have a second job.
Yeah. So personally, investors give me money to hit certain milestones, and my financial compensation is indirectly related to those milestones because those milestones cost money to accomplish and they're a higher priority than my personal compensation. So the lower we can keep our burn rate, the longer I can keep doing this. So I live an extremely frugal, boring, unadventurous lifestyle, which is quite contradictory to my college days. And I'm kind of like a hermit. I just sit at home all the time because I can't afford to do anything. And because I know if I do something, that's spending money that I could be spending to hit another milestone. And, it's tough. I did Uber for a while until there was a car crash, and so I no longer did Uber. So I'm starting to do tutoring. I've done manual labor. I've edited papers. I picked up a consulting gig. I am going to hustle whatever I need to do to make things happen.
That's great. And for the record, the car crash, you weren't in the car. That crash, someone was driving your car and crashed, and the resulting issue precluded you from having a vehicle that qualified for Uber.
Yeah.
So anyone who's out there, Anthony is, I won't say great, but I will say he is an above average driver.
A lot of time on the road.
Yeah, a lot of time on the road. So not his fault. Anyone who was out there like, how do you get kicked out of Uber? Or did you kill someone? No. Nothing like that. And I think, too, one of the things that's good for people to hear about, in addition to what you just outlined, in terms of the compensation, is to get that clear picture. So when you say frugally, I think there are people out there who think $30,000, maybe $25,000, but how am I going to get by on $2,000 a month? So, and this was a point of contention earlier because I didn't realize we had paid you multiple times in 2016. So, how much did you make? What are you claiming on your 2016 taxes?
I am claiming around $10,500.
$10,000 for the year.
For the year.
So less than $1,000 a month. You live in Southern California.
I do live in Southern California.
So anyone out there who thinks it's super easy and that you just kind of go with the dream and you get that check and then you start paying your bills, I think Anthony is the reality. And I'll say it's amazing the level of optimism that you continue to bring and drive forward. And how does that attitude help in the face of all of this?
I think it's the only possible attitude to have, given this. I think perseverance is a trait that separates the weak from the dedicated. And I'm sure people could do what I'm doing, but it's a matter of sustaining to do what I'm doing. Because anyone can live cheaply for a week, a month, but you get 3.5 years into missing social events, not going on vacation, foregoing opportunities to go do simple mundane things that I used to take for granted or cherish. Like if I can go to the movies, like that's like a day out for me. Like we went to the movies this weekend, like that was big. We spent $25, we got popcorn, a large soda, and like wow, that's what I did for the past 2 weeks. Like that was my highlight. And like that sucks. I don't have any kids. I'm in my 20s. Like all my other friends are making buku bucks, really raking it in, and it's tough to be the poor one.
We went to the movies this weekend. And see, I am in a similar spot, but because I have 2 kids. And so life is very different there. But I feel you, man. Like in that when just nothing happens and you can't get out and do it. And I also want to get back. You had touched on the stress relief and the physical activity. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, obviously where we met. And I will say for everyone, if you're not doing it, check it out, get into it, because there is no greater stress relief than legally being able to choke another consenting adult who is trying to choke you. It is just the best to get that outlet. But it kind of ties into what it is we're really doing. And we've talked a lot about this, and people talk about, the Fit Guard as this mouth guard, this safety device. But you and I have had the conversation many times that it's about something bigger and about sports and athletes in general. And you'd mentioned, playing rugby for ASU and some of your background. So just talk what is sports? What does sport in general mean to you, and why are you so passionate about what it is we're trying to do?
I think most individuals who reach a certain caliber of athleticism has a certain understanding of other athletes who compete at that caliber, because there's a certain mentality that you need to be a national or international competitor in whatever your sport may be. Perhaps it's highlight or football. It doesn't really matter, but there's just like a certain wavelength where you get what level of mastery it takes and the amount of time and passion and dedication it went into getting to such a level of competition. And so I believe, as an athlete myself, and the reason a lot of other athletes are successful in business specifically is because that drive rolls over into other aspects of their life on and off the field. And so I think dedication and passion are exemplary of traits of athletes, and therefore it's really important for me to have that in my professional setting as well.
Right, nice. And that's an Unreal Highlight reference, by the way. Probably the first ever allusion to highlight in the history of podcasts. And now watch, I'm going to get a letter from some guy in Macau that's like, dude, I run the Highlight podcast.
Miami's where Highlight goes.
Okay, so someone in Miami is going to hear this and be furious. Like, well, you think you invented Highlight all of a sudden?
Cubans, man, they love it.
MakerSource guy. I think that's great. And one of the things, that I look at, especially now having kids, is what sports gave to me growing up in teaching me how to compete and how to practice hard at something to get better. Working towards a common goal, winning together, losing together, and having victory or defeat be about more than just myself, and learning how to win and how to lose, and kind of seeing the state of some sports because of the head injury epidemic. It's cool to hopefully be working on a solution that kind of undemonizes some of those sports a little bit to get parents and kids exciting about playing again, and being able to say, hey, look, we don't feel any sport is inherently dangerous, so go play. And if something does happen, start to take steps to mitigate and consider safety at that point. But, plenty of people are going to play all kinds of sports and never have an issue. And so, being able to hopefully make things a little bit more fun again and less scary is awesome.
I would agree. Personal motto of mine for sports is, sports teaches you to be thankful when you win and humble when you lose. Mm-hmm. And when you deal with investors and they reject you, and you deal with other people and you miss an application, or you feel you're better than some other company who beat you for final, it's important to be able to have other experiences to fall back on, to not take it personally, because that's where people fall out, when they feel that because they were rejected or because they were passed on, it was a reflection of them, and they don't put themselves in well, maybe that's just what they were looking for. It's not your fault,
right?
Just didn't match up,
right? Yeah, and it's it really is funny to kind of get into that kind of stuff and to look at the different appeal of stuff that's out there, and then kind of why we're doing what we're doing. And we'll talk a little bit about, I meet a lot of people in the startup space who start with the goal of money. So it's money first. What can I do to make money? What can I make to make money? And I think one of the things that's so important when you hit this point, that we're at, is that what you're doing and what you're pursuing is something you're passionate about, and not something where you just say, look, I want to make money, because there's been plenty of times, we're all friends here, so we'll put it all out there, that we've approached $0 in the bank, and kind of wondered, like, are we going to make it to see tomorrow? And so, how important is it, I guess, just for you kind of giving advice, the standpoint of entering into this, going into a startup because it's something you're passionate about or it's a problem you see that you want to solve, versus I see kind of a shift in the industry and I think there's a way to jump in and make money?
There is some very, very well-established economic game theory around money and incentivizing individuals. And so what that research shows is you can incentivize someone with money for a mundane task. The more money you give them, the faster they do that task. However, money is no longer an incentive for complex situations. If you need to do something abstract or an ideation or something that's like an intangible, money just doesn't incentivize people as much as something mundane or trivial or repetitive. And so for our situation, like the people who are doing this for money, again, with the short term, they could do it, but eventually they're just like, why am I doing this? My goal is to make money. Like, I don't care about this. I can make money a million other ways. And those are the people who fail off quicker because they're in it for the wrong reasons. And I believe if you have a kind of a bigger overall arching mission where getting money is a consequence of your success, there's a higher likelihood of you persevering. That doesn't mean you're going to make money. It just means it's just more chances of every single day when you wake up continuing to do what you did the day before.
Right. No, that's great. I think that's a key. And as long as we're talking about money, maybe we can talk about investment a little bit, because we have been able to raise a decent amount of money. Always more to be raised, but I think a lot of people who listen are early stage, as early, maybe even earlier than fit, and wanting to know, like, how did you guys even get to the point where you could be 3.5 years in and, just raising that money? So we were on a TV show, but aside from saying get on a TV show, what are your thoughts and kind of advice to anyone listening on, raising money and getting investment?
Well, I would like to delineate between those two because I think they're two different statements. So raising money and getting an investment are kind of, one's a subset of the other. So investment is one way to raise money. However, there's several different ways you can get money. So there's grants, there's startup applications, there's friends and family, which I don't really consider investment. I consider that like a personal favor, that they're giving you money and they're going to hold on to some of this fictitious equity that you just created out of nowhere. Then, of course, you have your traditional investments. None of us are probably dealing with VC investors, or else we wouldn't listen to this podcast in the first place. And really, generating traction and validation without spending money. So whether that's getting commitments to letters of intent, letters of support, having customers agree or provide testimonials, putting together a beta program, like there's so many other ways to demonstrate traction and validation that then consequentially could result in you bringing in money. And so, selling an idea, like we have researchers and we were going to give them product, but we just said, why don't we just charge the researchers to use our product? So we took a situation we were going to be spending money, we turned it into a situation we were generating money. And so to kind of always take a step back and figure out, like, well, what can I do to make money off of this is an important thing to consider, but not always have as a top priority.
Right. That's good. Yeah, I think that's a really key point, and one that I think a lot of companies miss out on is this idea that you need to prove to the people who want to give you money that the people who are spending money want to spend it on what you are offering. And if you can show those investors and the people who are giving the money over, look, people want to buy what it is we're making or selling, that helps a lot, that market validation. And fortunately, we've had success in that arena because people love the FitGuard, which I think is great and hopefully speaks to a shared passion from the market that Anthony and I were talking about, that people are interested in the FitGuard, in the platform, in a solution to this epidemic of these undiagnosed or unnoticed hard hits in sports. And touche on the delineation between raising money versus investment. I will give you the credit for that one. You got me there. That is correct. I would agree wholeheartedly on those different avenues. And then, talk about, just kind of, getting everything in place and everything that you need, and just how difficult it is to just kind of take that idea and make it something physical, and just maybe a minute or two on just how a company can do that, how someone listening to us can go from this idea in their head to something that you can hold and use.
I think that humility is a very important aspect, specifically related to a tangible good. If you have a skill set and you're a wicked developer, and you and your buddies can sit in a room and create this awesome website, that's great, man. Like, kudos to you. In my world, it's not that simple. There is no one smart mouthguard expert. There is no one person who knows more about smart mouthguards than me or Bob, or maybe potentially one of our competitors. But really, at the end of the day, there's probably 10 of us who know this stuff, because there is so much to know. You have working your way up from every single level. So you have someone who has to do schematics, design, someone who has to do the firmware to get that stuff working, someone who has to do the application, the Bluetooth to communicate that stuff, someone who has to do the charger, someone who's familiar with batteries, capacities, the chemical compositions of those batteries, something to put it in, the materials involved in those, whether they react with certain people, whether they interfere electromagnetically because they're causing interference with your Bluetooth communication or your antenna, someone who's experienced with charging, inductive charging, whatever type of charging you're using, up to your mobile application. So you have to have someone who can interact with your device, of course, that embedded guy. Then up to the cloud browser, you have to have someone who can build out your back end of your database, the front end, the user experience. So, just to get where our product is today, we must have gone through 20 to 25 engineers who are all experts in their own particular caveat of engineering. But to get them all to work in conjunction with one another is where the finesse and the skill comes in, because oftentimes you're the dumbest person in the room because you don't know, because that's why you're hiring them, because you don't know what you're doing. So it's hard to call bullshit. It's hard to say, hey, why did it take you 2 weeks when someone could have done it for a week if we knew what we were doing? And so I would always throw caution to the wind to, if anyone is hiring out a contractor, make sure you have someone on your team who's smarter or as smart as that contractor to validate the scope of work, to double check their stuff, and to keep them humble and know that they have someone who's looking over their shoulder and making sure that the work that they're delivering and producing is in line with their industry expectations.
Right. That's good. That's solid. And if anyone out there listening is just like, yeah, but where, how do we find them? If you found the podcast, you already know where to go. So MakerSource, start browsing those profiles and looking for vetted sources that can help do this work, because those companies are out there and they are looking for startups like us, like you, and you're hard to find. We're hard to find. As we mentioned, with the money coming in and we're developing product and we're trying to get research studies going and support those, there's not a lot for marketing and fluffy kind of stuff because there's not a product yet. So definitely check that kind of stuff out, because Anthony's right. You can get taken for a ride. And so we'll tell the story. We were at Phoenix Startup Week earlier and told this, but since if you're listening, you probably weren't in attendance. We had a gentleman out of Southern California who represented a company that we contracted with to do some work, and we were not well versed in the art of engineer statements of work and how all of this worked. So they sent us a bill and said, look, man, you pay for this. This is how it works. So we paid for it, and we paid quite a bit. And Anthony, what happened when we got back our very first boards? We're so excited. Take it away.
Yeah, so the boards looked how we expected them to look. They had the components that we listed that they needed to have on them, and they didn't turn on. And we did not specify that one of the requirements of the deliverables was for the device to actually be functioning. We apparently had designed paid for schematic and layout only, and to debug or to do any technical analysis of what might have gone wrong would be an extra per hourly rate for him to investigate what he didn't do correctly the first time through.
So, and one thing I will always, forever and ever and ever remember about the conversation after we got the boards back is just how casual this person was about saying, well, yeah, you never said they had to work. And like, I just remember Anthony and I just being speechless, like, what do you mean we never said they had to work? Like, that's a thing? Like, you have to actually specify that the work we paid you to do should be actual work, that what we paid you to build should turn on. And I will never, ever forget that. And, it was a result of Google searching who does this kind of work, because we didn't have those partners, we didn't have that network. There was no MakerSource, shameless plug number 3. And so, finding those was a challenge, and I think continues to be, but now we're much more, I don't know, and we're smarter about what we need to be doing, but it is still hard to find those people. So having resources is a key, and we've had kind of some gloom and doom for the last 10-15 minutes or so. What did Fit do last week that is a huge milestone for us that really represents tangible progress? I'll let you have this one and all of this glory, and you can tell everyone what we kicked off.
Yeah, so after 3.5 years of development, we finally delivered our first tangible units to a local university Division I wrestling program, and we are conducting a research study which will compare the cranial acceleration data collected through the FitGuard to what a trainer in the practice room might have seen, to see if there's any disparity between the amount of impacts the mouthguard registered and what a trainer may have acknowledged. And so really it's great because we can't fail or pass, we're just doing it, because this isn't a test of whether the FitGuard functions. This is a test of how well the human eye is paying attention and can quantify cranial acceleration, which we know is to be difficult. And so that's the whole point of this research study, is to have some empirical data saying, look, this is how hard the person was actually hit, and this is a corresponding degree of severity that a trainer has assumed that they were hit. And so, one thing we hear from investors is like, well, let us know how the test goes. It's like, well, there's no test to go. It's just going. It's just, we're just a part of it. So,
yes.
So it's going, and that's what matters.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome. And, hopefully a message of positivity as we get kind of towards the end here for anyone listening. 3.5 years in, we've raised money, we've struggled to raise money, we've raised money, we've struggled, we've had huge development leaps, we've had development stalls, we've had great days and absolutely horrific, miserable days. A big night for Anthony now is going to a movie, well, maybe a big month. It's like I got to go to a movie this month, and we got popcorn. And just last week, we progressed to the point where we actually kicked off a research study with the Division I university. So, anyone listening out there, it is possible. I mean, if two goofballs like us can get to this point without a technical or engineering background and can make this happen, then anyone listening can as well. But hopefully you have taken some of what we've said, and especially Anthony's journey to heart, that it's not easy. It is insanely difficult, and it really takes that drive. And I admire Anthony's ability to be that self-starter. Because while I'm sure he does it all in his bathrobe all day, he does do it all. So regardless of what he's wearing, hopefully he's wearing something, because in my head, whenever I talk to him on the phone, I imagine he's in a bathrobe.
Thanks, Bob.
Don't ruin that for me and tell me you're in your home office, a la kitchen table, completely nude, talking to me on the phone, because that would just kill it. But before we get out of here, any parting words of wisdom, anything you want to get out there?
A lot of times I get a lot of exposure to deal flow and other investors. And disclosure, I'm the moderator on Entrepreneur section of Reddit, which has around 250,000 subscribers. So I deal with a lot of other entrepreneurs and get to hear a lot of ideas. And really, if you have an idea, make sure you are solving a problem. If you are not solving a problem, no one will pay for your solution because it doesn't solve anything. And that's a very big, broad statement, but at the end of the day, just ask yourself, what problem am I solving, and who's going to pay me to solve that problem for them? If you can't answer that very, very basic question, I would strongly encourage you to reevaluate how you could answer that in a better way.
That's great. That's definitely solid words of wisdom. And I want to point out, too, that Fit, we have a profile on MakerSource. So we use it. You should use it. You can find out more info on the Fit Guard. If you're out there, you're listening, you're just like, hey, man, I want to know about this mouth guard, what's going on, keep tabs on what we're doing. You can check out that profile and get to our various information. But Anthony, thank you.
Yes.
Good chat. Good to be face to face in a room with you for a change. I appreciate that you didn't wear the bathrobe today, though it may have been kind of special. Had you shown up in the bathrobe?
Still time.
Okay. So what we're going to do is wrap this up today, and I'm going to see if Anthony did in fact pack that bathrobe, and we're just going to go from there because hey, partners. But thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode.
Cheers.